All right, this is what's happening to America. America is becoming globalist, or the globalists are taking over America. That's really the top line, and everything that has happened all fits into this format. You know, there's a lot of issues, and when you try to go through and figure out what's causing it, everything goes back to the same major issue, and that is globalization. Down the bottom there, we've got the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Royals, and all the bankers who are driving this. And there's several groups involved. There's the bankers I just mentioned, and then they have working for them these people who believe in utopia. Now, utopia, I trace back. I started out and I reread Orwell's 1984, and then I read Brave New World by H.G. Wells, and then Modern Utopia by H.G. Wells and Brave New World, and all this goes back to Plato. I mean, that's as far back as we can trace it, is Plato, this concept of utopia. And we have these people who think that they can create utopia in the world, and essentially people can become God. And these are our political class. Of course, they want to be the people running the world when it's appointed. Now, the problem they have to run the world is they have to do away with the opposition, and we really are the opposition to the globalists, we the American people. So to enact their plan, they have to neutralize the United States by destroying our two major strengths, which are our economy and our culture. The economy through trade treaties, which is, of course, is happening now, and the culture through immigration, mass immigration, and through our schools with Common Core currently. Major corporations now have joined forces with the globalists, which is what we've seen with the Republicans supporting the efforts. And the reason this has happened is because of the previous trade treaties have weakened our economy so much that the only place there's money anymore is in the government. So industry now has to go to the government to get what they want, and therefore has to do what the government wants them to do. The globalists, the elite, were previously called Illuminati. Some people still refer to them as that. Doesn't really matter what you call them. But they're going to continue to control more and more of our lives until essentially we revolt, or we're going to live the life of Orwell's 84, Huxley's Brave New World, or H.G. Wells' Modern Utopia. It's really good to go back and read these. They're tough reading, the older ones, and the further back you go, the harder it is to read. But I found the Brave New World to be closest to what they're doing to us right now. These are some warnings from previous presidents. Wilson, this really started back in Wilson's time, but he said, an invisible empire has been set up above the forms of democracy. Eisenhower, of course, warned about the disastrous rise of misplaced power with the industrial complex, military-industrial complex. And Kennedy probably characterized it the best by saying, we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. And that's what we see in the government. Top levels, again, are international families, Rothschilds, Rockefellers, nobilities. Then there's the Club of 300, the Committee of 300, the Club of Rome, the Round Table, and the Vatican. And the lower levels are many who meet in the Bilderberg Conference. And as you probably know, before presidents are chosen, the candidates are invited to the Bilderberg before they're selected. This is not exactly true, but it's kind of interesting. It says, "Hi, I'm Lord Jacob Rothschild. I'm the head of the Bilderberg Group. That means I control your president. I've decided Syria needs a centralized bank. My fellow Bilderberg members have approved my war in Syria, and I could care less about Obama. He's my puppet." But that's kind of the way it works. The bankers are at the top in terms of being behind the curtain, but they have all these overeducated, stupid intellectuals who think that they are going to run the world, and they're going to, rule us by educated people in particular areas because people aren't smart enough to manage themselves. And of course, in modern times, you can go back in history to the late 1800s and see a lot of socialism and utopianism, the Fabian societies and other groups. But George Herbert Walker in modern times has been probably the one who stands out the most and has been the most vocal.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order.
It used to be more secretive. You know, the New World Order was talked about 30 or 40 years ago, and nobody would say it out in open. Now they talk about the New World Order, or they just think the world would be better off if we had one world government. Right. I don't. I mean, I don't even like the size of our federal government, let alone one world government.
Yes, the need for a new world order.
And that kind of sums up the direction that our elite are trying to take us. Everything that's done is heading towards world order. All the major legislation that goes through Congress is based on something that came out of the UN. They passed the Food Safety Act several years ago, and now all of that's being translated into the US. And of course, this has been continued by Clinton, Bush, and Obama. I like that one.
Yeah.
And every political event must be looked at with regard to globalism. So things like climate change, biodiversity treaty, multiculturalism, Common Core, regionalization, immigration, world treaties, and wars and conflicts. Everything there is all based on achieving one thing, and that's world government. Because nothing in politics happens by accident at the top level. Everything's planned. Which is why when things happen that don't make sense, it's because we don't know the plan. For example, we have an open border. Why do we have an open border? We know immigrants are coming across it. We know that there's Muslim prayer rugs found at the border, but we don't try to stop it. Take the environment. Right now, they're trying to shut down all the coal plants in the United States. I don't know the latest statistic, but in 2012, they were planning 1,200 new coal plants around the world, mostly in China and India. And we're allowing them to build coal plants when they say that carbon dioxide is killing the planet. Well, it's the same planet. So we're shutting ours down, and they're building them, but that's okay. See, it doesn't make sense. And the reason it doesn't make sense is because it isn't about carbon dioxide. It's about control of people by making them think that carbon dioxide is killing the planet. So these are the major issues. I've tried to take all the issues and group them into 4 categories. And this is kind of in reverse order. The last one, protecting our constitutional rights, liberties, and freedom, I think is the most important. And then protecting our culture and way of life, and then maintaining our sovereignty, and then restoring our economy. I listed them the other way because you can't have constitutional rights, liberties, and freedom if you don't protect your culture and way of life, which you can't have if you don't maintain your sovereignty, which you can't have if you don't have an economy, because if you don't have any money, nobody can go out and protest, nobody can maintain those rights. So let's talk about the economy. First, I want to talk about the concept of free trade. It's been programmed into our minds that we have to have free trade, okay? Conservatives tend to always talk about the fact that liberals are programmed into Marxism, but conservatives, or so-called conservatives, are programmed in this concept of free trade. That free trade is good, it's beneficial, that is conservative to believe in free trade. This despite the fact that each major trade treaty or agreement over the last 30 years has cost tens of thousands of American jobs. For example, NAFTA, before they passed it, we had a $5 billion trade surplus. Most of you are old enough to remember Ross Perot debating Al Gore, and Al Gore was saying how great it was going to be, and Ross Perot talked about this giant sucking sound, and there it is. The $5 billion surplus went to a $54 billion deficit. So, they did so well with that, they gave most favored nation status to China, and that deficit went from minus $20 billion to minus $342 billion. And then, that went so well that just a couple of years ago, they passed the South Korea trade deal, and the deficit went from minus 13 billion to minus 25 billion. Our buddy here, Gus Bilderakis, voted for that. I had a talk with him ahead of time. It took me a year, but I had a chance to be one-on-one with him for an hour, and I gave him an economic presentation, and I showed him all the data. He still voted for it. And then, of course, there's the recent one, like Fast Track or TPP and the other treaties, and he's now voted twice for those.
Yep.
This is U.S. employment in manufacturers. This is from 1940 to 2000. You notice in 1940, before the war, there were like less than 10,000 people employed in manufacturing, and of course it shot up to 16,000 during the war, went down a little after the war, and then went up to around 20,000. So you can say we lost about 8,000 people in manufacturing, except you have to remember that the population, the population, hello? The population.
It's the microphone. Or maybe you're standing on the cord.
No, it's just
Okay,
wireless.
try it again. Doesn't like P.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go, move away.
Doesn't like pop.
Okay, let's try this one. Population it's not like this one either. Population in 1940 was only 132 billion, and the population in 2010 was 307 billion. So we've seen a tremendous increase in the population. So if you adjust that 8,000 for a 2.5 times increase in population, you can see we lost a lot of jobs in manufacturing. And there's two different statistics here. The bottom statistic is the labor force participation rate. And this is the most accurate gauge of the economy. You know, the government will tell you that the unemployment rate is something like 5-point-something%. That is what they call U6. That's the number of people who have filed for and are collecting unemployment in the last 6 months. There's also U12, which is the number of people collecting, and that's over a 12-month period. And there's the real unemployment, which is all people, and that's actually over 20%. In the United States, right, it's about 23%. But the statistic to look at is the labor participation rate. You can see that, what's that, starting in 03 to 2014, the number of people available to work who are working is very small. Up top is a separate statistic, and this is the Americans who are not in the labor force. And remember, we have like 315 billion now, and that's the number who are not in the labor force. This is the trade deficit chart, which goes back to, can't read that, was it
1960 to 2012.
Thank you. It started with NAFTA and then GATT and WTO. GATT is the Global Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. That's been around a long time. That was actually in the 40s, but they updated it. They had a revision to it. And this is all under Clinton. You know, Clinton passed NAFTA, he passed GATT, the WTO, World Trade Organization. And the World Trade Organization is currently in effect and is levying fines on us anytime they don't think we're playing fair in their mind. But initially when they passed NAFTA, of course, things didn't fall off right away because you still had American manufacturers and you had foreign, but eventually all the American manufacturers were forced out of business, and that's when it started falling off. The other thing that Clinton did is he repealed the Glass-Steagall Act. The Glass-Steagall Act was passed in 1933, I think, and that was in response to the recession. And what it did was to separate banking from finance. In other words, you couldn't invest. You had a bank or you were a financial organization. They were separated, and Clinton separated those two. And that's what's led to the speculation in 2008, which is why the market crashed. You have a question back there?
I think if you hold the microphone just a little further from your mouth, you'll have less trouble.
Okay, I'll try. Can you still hear me?
Yep.
Okay. The other thing that Clinton did is derivatives. Derivatives were around for a long time, but they weren't used very much. And they started becoming popular. And there was a proposal by the regulators to regulate derivatives, and Clinton stopped that. And that's also responsible for much of the inflation and the $18 trillion deficit we have, and the banking issues, problems we have in banking right now. So anyway, and as I said, in 2008, the economy crashed. We passed the stimulus bill. We dumped about $1 trillion into the economy, which made it look a little better for a while, but now it's gone, and the economy really hasn't recovered because jobs haven't come back. And because the civilian economy is down, as I mentioned earlier, business now is hurting for business, so they go to the government. And for example, it was last year before, GE went and had a meeting with Obama. They wanted to build wind turbines. So he gave them a contract to build wind turbines, but they bought 10,000 Chevy Volts while they were there, because he had all these Chevy Volts that people weren't buying, and he wanted to make it look like people were getting electric cars. That's fascism. That's where the government doesn't own the resources, but controls the resources. This is just another chart of manufacturing.
Damn.
And really what's important is that we have lost about 50,000 factories since NAFTA. And when we lose factories, the buildings are still there, but there's no equipment in them to build anything, and there's no people that know how to operate the equipment if it was there. So we really left us high and dry. When this whole thing starts unwinding, which it is, we can't rebuild ourselves because, you know, and if you go back 30 years ago or so, we had recessions, right? And they laid off people for a while, and you could do some stimulus, and you could bring it back, but you can't do that anymore because there's nothing to bring back. China. Of course, now they have a whole bunch of our money, and they want to do something with it, and of course this is the best place to spend it, so they're buying stuff. They bought Smithfield, which is a $13 billion global food company, the world's largest pork processor, and they own those products, and they have a lot of employees. Now, along the same lines with food, you know, they just approved to allow companies to take chickens manufactured in the United States and send them to China for processing and then send them back for consumption, which is probably what they're going to do with the pork. And they're now moving into buying R&D firms so they can get our technology more than we give them. Firms replacing American workers with aliens. Most recently, you've seen Disney in the news, where they took existing people, fired them, brought in replacements who are aliens, and told them, we'll give you a severance package if you train the people that are replacing you. This is not new. This occurred in Oldsmar over 10 years ago. I talked to Bill Rackus Sr. about this at the time. It took him a while to get back to me. He said, it's a loophole in the law. Well, it's not a loophole in the law. The law that allows for H-1B visa workers, which are skilled workers, says that only for those skills that cannot be acquired in the United States. It doesn't say you can bring in people and replace existing people. So they're violating the law, but nobody will stop them. And this is going on all over the country. It's been going on for over 10 years. There's firms that act as consultants that show companies how to do this, how to get rid of their employees. And so what's happened is that the American economy is in a never-ending downward spiral that has been in for some time. And our economy is really a sinking ship without economic engines. Trade history. A little more on free trade. Free trade was not a concept for America by our founding fathers. You know, people keep saying we got to have free trade, we got to have free trade. This is what the Republican Party thought about trade in 1880. The principles of the Republican Party were a protective tariff platform. That was the platform of the Republican Party. And on the left, you see protection for our farms and mines. And on the right, you see protection to trades and industry. Okay, there's only really three ways a country can have wealth: mining, manufacturing, and agriculture. That's it. Now, manufacturing includes software and anything else you sell, but there's really only three ways to have wealth. Now, they don't let us mine anymore because that's unfair to the environment. They've given away all our manufacturing, and the only thing we have left is agriculture, and most of it's GMO that most countries don't want. So just understand that this is what the Republican Party stood for. And now it stands for itself. Okay, Fast Track Authority. This is the latest scam on the American people to give Obama authority to negotiate trade agreements with Asian and European countries, to give him authority to turn American sovereignty over to international courts, because that's what these agreements do. These are the agreements that they're currently talking about. There's TPP, which is the Trans-Pacific Partnership. There's TTIP, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, otherwise known as the US-EU agreement. And there's the TISA, which is Trade and Services Agreement. These are all secret. Nobody's seen them except some congressmen who are allowed to go into a room without a notebook and read them but not take notes. And then, of course, there's also the Trade Assistance Authority, and there's Fast Track. Fast Track is to give Obama the authority to negotiate those three agreements and then come back to Congress and say, okay, here's what I did, take it or leave it, so they could vote it up or down. But Congress, you know, is supposed to be responsible for treaties. That's their responsibilities. They've essentially given their authority to Obama to do this. Now, TAA is Trade Assistance Authority. They know that when they pass trade agreements, people lose jobs. So to make it look like they're going to help people and there won't be any harm, they pass Trade Assistance Authority, which is to give compensation to people who lost their jobs because of the treaties and agreements they passed. They've done this every time. You know, it makes them feel good, okay? And here we have some of our favorite Republicans. Mitch McConnell with his buddy Obama. We have Paul Ryan, who's chairman of Ways and Means, advanced the treaty.
Piece of crap.
We have the most disgusting individual in the country.
Drunk.
Yeah. And we have our local guy, who I had to put into a small picture because that's what I think of him.
Suits him.
Now, just know how he thinks about this. He sent a letter to Deb, which I have a copy of here,
He did.
and he said, trade is an important part of the United States economy, supporting 38 million jobs domestically. The United States is also a leading exporter in the world, exporting $2.1 trillion worth of goods and services. Should the United States enter into TPP in 2020 alone, exports are expected to jump by $600 billion, supporting more than 3 million jobs. Okay. And then, on his website, he says, I voted in favor of Trade Promotion Authority because TPA does not give the president additional authority. It actually puts Congress in the driver's seat. I don't know how he figures that out, but that's what he says. It's on his website, his newsletter.
He's retarded.
And then he says, I also believe in the power of free and fair trade.
He doesn't.
I am a free market conservative. Okay? So that's who he is.
That's who he is. Oh, my goodness.
So he's a liar. That's
He's
who
a
he is.
liar.
Okay, WikiLeaks exposed 17 document dump of the TISA, which is the Trade and Services Agreement. They said that corporations would be able to use the law in its current form to hold sway over governments deciding whether laws promoting culture, protecting the environment, or ensuring equal access to services were unnecessary, burdensome, or whether knowledge of indigenous cultures or public services were essential to achieve parity. What they're saying is that they're going to say, if a country, one of the things was, if a foreign company operating in the United States wanted to bring their employees in to work here, they could, under this agreement. So, and that applies to any company. So, and they would not be subject to any H-1B visa or any other visa restrictions. So they could bring in, any foreign company working, operating here could bring in their own workers at any point they want. And it would be legal. That's part of this agreement. And that's part of the problem with all these agreements, is that they give away our sovereignty and our right to determine and also the economy for our people. The TPP has about 46 chapters, and about only 6 are about trade, and the others are about international agreements on the flow of goods and labor. This is more with goods and labor, where you can't, we as a country can't determine the flow of goods and labor. And as an example, there's actually I have 2 examples. WTO just forced the United States to remove country of label origin. We have on our packages meat, and we say what country it's from. The World Trade Organization has decided, because of prior agreements, that we cannot do that because it's discriminatory to the other countries. The other countries involved here are Mexico and Canada. So
They sued us.
they're taking away our rights to do this. We just got sued by
WTO, wasn't it?
Brazil,
Brazil.
and we have to pay $300 million to end a cotton trade dispute. And this is what's going to happen when you pass these agreements. So we don't know exactly what's in them, but we know what they're going to do. They're going to take away our right for self-determination, our right to our own laws, and they're going to override all this. They're going to fine us every time we do something they don't like. And when I say they're setting up international tribunals of people who will make these decisions. This would not be something we have any say in. Okay, protecting our culture and our sovereignty. Legal immigration, H-1B visas, the quotas have been reached for the year, and watch for Congress to try to increase these. Rubio is big on this. He wants to keep bringing in more foreign workers. He thinks it's good for the country. 7.4 million work permits have been issued to aliens since 2009. Our country has been grown prosperous by integrating into her culture people from other cultures, but America and no nation has been benefited by continuing multiculturalism. Every country that has multiculturalism has issues. There's people always fighting. What made America work is that people came here and became part, and we all became the same. We didn't stay separate. And we cannot accept such a high rate of immigration as they're forcing on us right now with both legal and illegal aliens. Muslim refugees, up to 10,000 Syrian refugees. Most of the Muslims will be resettled in cities throughout the United States in 2015, with a total of 75,000 scheduled to be brought here. The UN makes a decision on refugees and tells each country how many they're going to take and from where. These are green cards. Green cards issued to nationals of predominantly Muslim countries in 2001 to 2013, 1,628,000. This is something you don't see very often, but I know this because I have friends up in New England who work for tech firms, mostly software firms. The companies are now telling managers to hire foreign workers and not hire American workers. They're actually telling them that. Most all the tech companies now have groups in China. They had them in India, but now they have them in China. And they're telling their managers they must have like 40% of their workers in China. And they're actually driving more and more jobs over there. This is just an unofficial thing. This is something that's happening. There's nothing to do with the government. Of course, the government lets it. But that's what's going on. Illegal immigration, and this is really, I guess, quasi-illegal because the government's saying they're refugees. But the second wave from Central America, you know they have the place up in Holiday where one of the processing stations they use. And then, of course, there's a plan after they bring them in to bring the relatives in behind them, which will just greatly intensify the number of refugees. Now we have, and there's 9 government contracts to resettle. They're all through religious organizations, the Catholic Charities, the Jewish organization. All denominations have all been sucked into this by giving them money to bring these refugees in and take care of them. And they're putting them into special locations, into groups, probably for propaganda. The Republicans, as you remember, the Republicans betrayed us on amnesty. You may recall that they said that they're going to attach amnesty clause into the defense appropriation bill, and therefore it wouldn't get passed unless they put a restriction on amnesty in there. And of course that didn't happen. And the thing is, they knew it wouldn't happen because they knew the Republicans wouldn't vote against the defense authorization bill. So it was a scam. And then in 2014, ICE relieved 2,457 convicted criminal aliens and 1,107 in 2015 as of May 9th. That's as per Jeff Sessions. And here we have our friend Marco Rubio. This was a while ago. He was advocating for illegal aliens while Chuck Schumer is smirking in the background. Racial tension. Obama is deliberately creating hate between black and white, rich and poor, men and women, citizens and alien, police and citizens. For example, Trayvon Martin. I don't know if you remember when the Trayvon Martin incident first happened, they had his mother on, who he didn't live with, and she talked about, she was apologizing for his behavior until, of course, the Justice Department and black leaders got down there and told her, no, you got to make him a victim. Ferguson, Justice Department, sent people to agitate, use Soros as the bagman, to hire protesters. Do you know that Obama is going to Charleston tomorrow, along with Boehner and a delegation to have a service?
Obama's giving a eulogy.
Yes, he's giving a eulogy. Okay? But this is all create hate. That's what this is all about. This is division. This goes back to what is the agenda here. This is all to divide the country, to make things so bad that we beg for change. Remember what happened in the French Revolution? They didn't establish a republic, they just established a democracy. The crowds went crazy, they took over. Napoleon came in and he said, I'll make it okay. And they said, please give us peace. Here, take the country, anything. And that's the plan. Shootings. Sad, of course, but the common denominator in all the shootings is that all the shooters are taking psychiatric drugs. All of them. The Colorado shooter, it was published that he'd been treated by a doctor that was a former CIA agent. And if you recall, they found him sitting in the parking lot afterwards in the car, no clue what happened. And you may recall also that witnesses inside talked about someone opening the door for someone who came in. And of course, there's no second person now, it's just a shooter. So it kind of makes you wonder. And then of course there's Sandy Hook. If you ever watched the videos of Sandy Hook, you kind of have to question that. Government research, something else you might not be aware of, but the government did research in the 50s, 60s, and 70s to try to get people to commit criminal acts against their basic value system. And they found that they were unsuccessful until they gave them psychiatric drugs. The project was called MKUltra. Foreign affairs. Because of an attack by Saudi Muslims, we have invaded, destroyed, or tried to destroy Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Egypt, Syria, Iran, Ukraine, and to some extent Russia. Meanwhile, we have refused to secure our borders, and we have encouraged the import of militant Islam and terrorism. That's a sad state of affairs for foreign policy. You know, what are we doing? We established the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. When I say we, Obama established the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. The Egyptians threw them out. Obama sent these two characters over there, and this is them in Egypt, trying to get Egypt to take the Muslim Brotherhood back.
That's right. Jeez.
The Iran deal. Congress relinquishes its treaty authority again. Well, they did that first. And there won't be a treaty. They'll just have another review. Obama will have a deal and they'll review it. Okay, last one. Protecting our constitutional rights, liberties, and freedoms. Militarization of the police. The militarization of the police has occurred because the Department of Homeland Security has gotten involved in training and has trained them to be military, which is what Obama wanted. He wanted his national police force. And so we see Gestapo actions like no-knock raids, rough treatment of citizens, use and the behavior of with military equipment, and hundreds of cases of police abuse of power, many of them on film. but not Ferguson. That was a bad kid. Operation Jade Helm. Operation Jade Helm is an operation that's going to start in July in the entire Southwest. It's called Jade Helm 15. It will include over 1,200 troops from the Army Green Beret, Navy SEALs, Air Force Special Ops, Marine Corps Special Ops, Marine Corps Expeditionary, Army 82nd Airborne, and interagency partners, which would be like the CIA, FBI, Homeland Security. Over 1,200 troops will participate July through September. The objective is to practice capturing dissident citizens in the United States. That's the objective. They're supposed to mingle amongst the local people undetected, and then spring the light and capture dissident citizens. This, of course, is a drill. It is likely that the governors of these states and local officials gave permission. When they issued this thing, it's on the internet, it was an invitation to participate. I suspect they gave them grants. I suspect the governors all agreed to this. Because the Constitution, Amendment 3 says no soldier shall in time of
Quarter.
come on, behave. Be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. This is Florida. This is South Florida. This happened before the exercise. This is was captured on video. I have a picture of this. I sent it to Rick Scott. We got it here. It doesn't matter. And asked him, did he approve this? Of course, I haven't heard back.
Right.
But I sent a letter, because I know he likes to read letters.
Yeah.
Okay, other major issues. Internet grab. The FCC didn't decide to do this. Obama appointed all the new commissioners to go into the FCC to take over the internet. Basically, they want to tax it, they want to censor it, they want to eliminate dissent, and Google and Facebook are part of this, working with them. And of course, this is because they know we learned from the internet. And the reason is because all the mainstream media is controlled by 6 corporations, which is why liberals think that Obama's so good and socialism is good because it's in the paper, it's in the newspaper, it's on television, it's on all the media. If you don't watch alternative internet, you won't know any better. This is just a side thing that this is a rise in autism from 1975 to 2009.
Wow.
And this is the increase in GMO crop planting, the bar graph, and along the bottom is the incidence of autism. So in 1975, which is on the left, it was 1 in 5,000, and today, 2014, it was 1 in 88. That's what's happening to autism along the bottom, and that's the increase in the GMO crops planted in hectares. Direct correlation. Has FDA talked about this? Has anybody talked about this?
What about the vaccines?
And then we have Common Core. Common Core is a Marxist program designed by the socialists in the government, but also adopted by the Republicans, because the Republicans see it as a school-to-work program. And that's the way it's being pushed, and why it's being pushed by Jeb Bush. They've gone to the corporations and they said, we will train your workers for you. We will monitor these children because we're going to test them, and we will determine which ones are best suited to work in your place. And then we will alert you to this when they're like in 8th grade, and we'll let you work with them and train them, and we'll actually train them for your business. That's what the Republican Party is doing with Common Core. And then, of course, the federal government has given out grants to most states for designing, developing, implementing the longitudinal databases, which are the data tracking, which happens from pre-K through work. They're tracking everything about the kids, values and beliefs, not just test scores, attendance, religion, voting, and habits of their families. Everything's in this database. Climate change. Man-made global warming is a total scam to take over control of people's lives. I mentioned this earlier. CO2 is a trace atmospheric gas. It's 0.04%, and man's contribution to this is insignificant. Meanwhile, we have chemical spraying with chemtrails, and we have HAARP controlling the atmosphere. basically the sun and earth cycles are what are responsible for warming and cooling. This only goes back 2,500 BC. You know, the Earth is in an interglacial period and has been this entire time. So there's many, many cycles. When you look at the Earth's climate, you have to look in geological time. You can't look in like last year, or 10 years ago, or 20 years ago. And you can see that there have been warming periods and cooling periods. And each warming period ended abruptly because of volcanoes, where we've had massive amounts of dust sprayed into the atmosphere, which clouded over the planet and cooled it. And this has happened time and time again. These directly correlate to the Earth's movement around the sun in its ecliptic, which isn't exactly centered. And the Earth's gravitational attraction to the sun changes because of the distance, as does the magnetic field. And this is what controls the weather. And it always has, and it's been known for some time. But again, going back to the New World Order, they needed a vehicle to get people to surrender their sovereignty. And the vehicle they chose was, oh my God, you know, the Earth is dying. You have to surrender your sovereignty to the UN, and we're going to control carbon. And then locally, we have things like unconstitutional regional government. You know, the state of Florida has counties and cities and so forth, but we don't have regions in the Constitution. And the United States Constitution, Article 4, Section 4, says that the United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a Republican form of government. Well, that means you get to vote for the people who represent you. Regional government is not elected by the people. It's a violation of the Constitution. Then we have these public-private partnerships, and a good example of this is the Miami Tunnel. They gave a corporation called MAT, LCC, a total of $1.4 billion as a return on $80 million of capital risk for that tunnel. That's your public-private partnership. Tampa, FDOT is going to kick in $1 million for a Tampa streetcar expansion. That's stupid. Doesn't like that slide. Globalist control. Okay, in the United States, globalists are organized as a syndicate and run by two crime families, the Republican crime family and the Democrat crime family. And they should no longer be referred to as parties, okay?
Right.
Each crime family is given wealth, power, and status. And to maintain the status, each family has to operate by the rules of the syndicate, and of course ignoring the will of the people. The syndicate rules are that the group in power, this is from me, I made this up. The group in power gets 60% of the spoils, and the other group gets 40%. So when they switch, it goes the other way.